Hello every pony, I am Critical Thought and welcome to my review of Spice Up Your Life. Today, the former VP of Development turned writer, Mike Vogel, is back to bring us another episode in Season 6. His debut episode, at least in terms of writing, A Hearths Warming Tail, received much praise from me in my review of it, and I even gave it my most coveted rating. Will Mike Vogel impress again with this Rarity and Pinky-centric episode, or will he prove that his success on his debut episode was just a fluke? Let's find out. We start this episode with the main six along with Starlight Glimmer gathered around the map. Twilight says that she's noticed that the map hasn't called for any of them on a journey in a long time, and suspects that it might need fixing. With Starlight's help, Twi performs a spell to turn the map back on again. I don't know why this little bit was included, honestly. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Since when did magical artifacts behave like electronics that needed to be fixed to get working again? All this really serves to do is provide a somewhat mediocre moment of comedy with Pinky as she watches the map glitch out and place the main six cutie marks all over the map. Finally, the map settles on sending Rarity and Pinky to Canterlot. Oh god, not another Rarity and Pinky episode. Please don't let this be a repeat of the Gift of the Maud Pie. However, the map choosing Rarity for this mission to Canterlot does provide a pretty great moment of comedy, where we see all of the ponies' reactions to Rarity's outlandish travel plans. I swear, this little roundtable has provided some of the best comedy this season. Theme. When the mares get to Canterlot, Pinky's stomach starts to rumble and they decide to get some lunch before finding the friendship problem the map has assigned them to solve. Rarity takes Pinky to Restaurant Row, a street lined side to side with the finest dining experiences in all of Equestria. She goes on to inform Pinky about the hoof rating signs located above every restaurant, and says that any restaurant with a hoof rating of 3 hooves has been approved by the culinary expert Zesty Gourmand. When Pinky and Rarity try a few of the 3 hoof rated restaurants, they find that they don't really enjoy the food, so Rarity decides to let Pinky choose their next restaurant. Pinky's nose guides her to an unrated restaurant tucked away in Restaurant Row, called the Tasty Treat. When they sit down, the chef of the Tasty Treat, Saffron Masala, comes out of the kitchen and greets them and tells them about their specials, which Pinky excitedly orders. However, Rarity declines to be served, due to the restaurant not being rated by Zesty Gourmand. While Pinky waits for her order, Saffron's father, Coriander Cumin, comes out to start closing up the restaurant. Soon, Saffron comes back with Pinky's food and starts arguing with her father. Her father is upset at the lack of business the restaurant is getting, and Saffron is upset that her father doesn't listen to her ideas on how to improve the restaurant. That's when Pinky and Rarity notice that this is likely the friendship problem they were sent to Canterlot to solve. Also, I gotta give props to the art direction team on FIM. The interior of this restaurant is so warm, cozy, and inviting. Normally, most Indian restaurants are a bit too intimidating for my liking, but this one looks like a place I'd love going to. And now I'm hungry. Pinky says that she can help get the restaurant full of ponies, and Rarity says she can use her influence in Canterlot to persuade Zesty Gourmand to come to the restaurant and give it a 3-hoof rating. After Rarity returns later and says that she was able to convince Zesty to come try the food at the Tasty Treat, she reveals that there's a catch. Zesty only agreed to come on the grounds that she came tonight, and that the place needs a pretty big renovation in order to impress her, due to her rating system not only judging the food, but the decor and presentation as well. This leads into a brand new song called It's Gonna Work. In this song, Rarity tries to convince Coriander that conforming to the Restaurant Row's status quo will all but guarantee them a 3-hoof rating. Meanwhile, Pinky is convincing Saffron that the uniqueness of the Tasty Treat will be super popular amongst the other similar restaurants of Restaurant Row. Obviously, this sets up a pretty great advancement of the conflict, as it shows how Rarity and Pinky have different outlooks on what the restaurant needs to do to succeed. And Daniel Ingram delivers it in yet another fantastic way. This is more like what I was expecting for the first song of the season, instead of what we got with Out on My Own. Also, I love the waifu material pony in this sequence. She's adorable. Fun little fact about me, I used to be a big fan of the Cheetah Girls, and even went to go see them in concert for my birthday once. Yeah, I know it's a franchise for girls, but I loved the music. The last Cheetah Girls film, One World, took place in India and had a very Indian aesthetic throughout the whole film, especially in its music, and I loved it. I'm getting a lot of that same vibe here with the tambourines, violins, bongo drums, and mandolins. Pinky and Rarity harmonize surprisingly well together, and while the chorus leaves a little to be desired, the verses deliver the exposition wonderfully, all the while presenting deeper meanings that let it stand alone as its own piece of music. Daniel Ingram does it again. After the musical number, Pinky and Saffron are having a hard time convincing ponies to come to the restaurant due to it not being rated, until they stumble across a couple traveling from Minneapolis who are unimpressed with the stuffy upper-class food of Restaurant Row, to which Saffron and Pinky immediately direct to the tasty treat. Initially, I was asking myself when I reviewed this episode, why a restaurant in such dire circumstances couldn't just lie to their customers that they were a 3-hoof rated restaurant, just to get enough patrons in to impress Zesty Gourmand, so she can give it an official 3-hoof rating. However, I soon realized that even if the restaurant patrons weren't clued into the ruse when Zesty showed up, Zesty might still not give it a 3-hoof rating. Rarity states earlier in the episode that Zesty has a very refined palate, which to me seemed like a throwaway line at the time, but now I realize it's integral to progressing the conflict. It justifies both Rarity and Pinky's actions in the plot. When Pinky and Saffron return to the restaurant, they are shocked to see it completely transformed to look like every other Canterlot restaurant. What's with this show and performing huge acts of construction in a matter of hours? First the Saddle Row review, and now this? Anyway, Saffron and Coriander start to argue about whether they should sacrifice their authenticity for success, and soon Rarity and Pinky join in. Suddenly, Zesty Gourmand, along with the 2 Minneapolis tourists, show up at the door. Zesty sits down and does not give an order, but instead asks to be impressed. Saffron, on the side of Pinky, goes behind Coriander's back and makes a flavorful soup for Zesty. Rarity opposes, but Pinky objects, saying she's trying to fix Rarity's ruining of the restaurant, and attempts to deliver the soup to Zesty. Rarity then trips Pinky on her way out, sending the soup flying and spilling all over Zesty. Angered, Zesty leaves the establishment, saying that only uncultured ponies would enjoy the flavorful taste of this restaurant, and only a culinary expert such as herself can register the subtle flavor of true culinary art. On her way out, she threatens Rarity and tells her to not recommend inferior restaurants, as it could damage her reputation in Canterlot. With Rarity, Pinky, and Coriander feeling down about the fate of the restaurant, Saffron returns to the table with some of her father's signature spicy flat noodle soup, which sparks many fond memories from Saffron's childhood. She tells her father that all she ever wanted to do is share the food she grew up loving with the ponies of Canterlot. When Pinky and Rarity try the soup and are amazed at how delicious it is, Rarity decides not to give up on the restaurant and to not care about the approval of Zesty Gourmand. She decides that she will use her own influence as a fashion expert in Canterlot to drive ponies to the establishment so they can taste for themselves how wonderful the food is and spread it through word of mouth, while Pinky works to restore the building to its former rustic glory. She then assigns Saffron and Coriander to stay in the kitchen, cooking together, just like they used to when Saffron was a young filly, which is all set to an instrumental reprise of It's Gonna Work. Later, Saffron and Coriander thank Rarity and Pinky for helping them to remember the joy they used to feel when cooking with each other, and the doors open to a huge crowd of ponies eager to taste food with Rarity's seal of approval. That's when Zesty passes by the packed restaurant and walks in, shocked that every pony is here despite it having no hooves, and not in a good way. Also, props to the animators for including some famous chefs in the background, such as Gordon Ramsay, Julia Child, and Rachel Ray. Little touches like these are always welcome to see. They're little nods to the older fans who might recognize these cameos, and it's always a treat when we get them. That's when Rarity and Pinky confront Zesty with the moral of this episode. Neither them nor Zesty has the right to dictate what opinions, in this case regarding to food, other ponies can have. While Zesty may prefer a more subtle and refined taste, she is in no position to tell the other ponies of Canterlot to share the same opinion. I absolutely love this moral. I feel like the issue this addresses is a bit too complex and heavy to be solved with a simple moral from MLP, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. This moral, I feel, is more applicable to children, though, as the conflicts they may have revolving around this issue can probably be fixed by keeping this in mind. Adults, on the other hand, while the moral is still useful, it's harder for adults to practice it. When you start getting into things like politics or religion or sex, this moral becomes much, much harder to practice and difficult to maintain. However, I will give the episode credit where it's due for trying to remind people of this important moral to remember. After Pinky and Rarity confront Zesty, this inspires the patrons who also own restaurants on Saddle Row to abandon their conformity that they have been practicing for Zesty's rating system, in lieu of making the food they want to make, packed full of flavor and heart. We close out this episode with a shot of Rarity and Pinky's cutie marks glowing, signaling that their mission from the map is now complete. So, what did I think of Spice Up Your Life? Ironically, this episode certainly spiced up my interest in MLP. While I wouldn't consider this one of my favorite episodes, it is one of the better ones in Season 6. I loved the new characters of Saffron and even Coriander, and I hope we see more of them in the future. I'd like to see them get more of a bigger role in the lives of the main six. How cool would it be if the Tasty Treat became sort of a home away from home for the main six while vacationing to Canterlot? The song It's Gonna Work was also beautifully crafted and brought the right amount of energy to this episode. Also, I think the character of Zesty Gourmand was a great counterpart to Rarity, just as Cheese Sandwich had been for Pinkie Pie and Moondancer had been for Twilight in Season 5. Zesty is basically what Rarity would be if her importance on social status was taken to the extreme, and I think it works really well. The moral, while a bit too difficult to implement in certain situations, was also a fantastic one to give, and I'm surprised it took this long to be addressed in the show. In the end, I'm going to give this episode a rewatch it rating. This is a great contrast to the last episode, Applejack's Day Off. Spice Up Your Life is a slice-of-life story that's done right. Perhaps one the Fox Bros could take some cues from for their future episodes. As always, I am Critical Thought, and I will see you all in my next video. Never stop thinking critically.